Chapter 2 Drug Trial. Twilight Sparkle stood in front of her friends. Rarity, Applejack, Pinkie Pie, Rainbow Dash, and Fluttershy were all arranged around a delicate-looking instrument. So, tell us again why we're here, Twilight? Applejack asked uncertainly, looking at the bubbling liquid in the tubes. Science! Twilight Sparkle responded with a grin. I tried this on myself last night, but I became rather distracted, and I didn't manage to record any of my notes for posterity. This is safe, right? Rainbow Dash asked, prodding the tubes with her hoof. Twilight scowled and steadied the tubes with her own hoof. If you don't touch it, it is. I'm not sure I want to try any, Fluttershy admitted. I have dresses to make, Rarity complained. There is a very prestigious party for my clients I wish to attend tomorrow. Come on, girls, for science, Twilight Sparkle said, with bright gleam in her eyes. Rainbow Dash sighed, and then set her jaw. I'll try anything once. Fluttershy whimpered softly. Okay, but just a little bit. Rarity stepped closer to the device. I have things to do. Let's get this over with quickly. Applejack gave a firm nod. You can count me in, Sugar Cube. Twilight Sparkle smiled, and then stepped forward to start the process. Once the dried product was done burning, the acrid-smelling vapor was processed through the water tubes to cool it, and removed the larger impurities, so that the four ponies didn't get a lungful of ash. Twilight Sparkle and Pinkie Pie both watched as the four girls inhaled, in turn, from the mouthpiece. A collective coughing fit took all four of them, as their eyes watered and drew back from the table, snorting and tossing their heads. This smells positively horrid, Rarity complained. I can taste it, Rainbow Dash protested. It's not so bad, Fluttershy tried to reason. Applejack remained silent for a moment, nose wrinkled, before she asked, Hey, why aren't you and Pinkie Pie having any? Twilight smiled and waved a hoof. We're the control group. We need at least two of us who are completely normal to record notes. Well, we took it, Rainbow Dash declared, rubbing a hoof against her tongue for a moment, trying to get rid of the taste. Now what do we do? Go about your daily lives. Pinkie Pie and I will be around to check on you all throughout the day, Twilight said with a happy nod. Rainbow Dash nodded, then walked over towards the door. I need to train for Wonderbolt's tryouts anyhow, she said, waving a hoof as she disappeared outside. And I must make these dresses, Rarity said, as she quickly followed. I have to feed Angel. He gets ever so angry if he doesn't get his meal on time, Fluttershy said quietly. And I have to go buck more trees. Big Mac will be mighty unhappy if he's got to buck the entire field himself, Applejack admitted, moving towards the door. Just remember to have snacks on hoof, Twilight called after them brightly. For some reason, it makes you hungry. It makes you hungry? Fluttershy asked curiously, as Rarity and Applejack made their way out. Pinkie Pie nodded earnestly. The cakes lowered my dose after I started eating all of the cakes I was baking. You wouldn't happen to have any to spare, would you? Fluttershy asked softly. Twilight bit her lower lip. Whatever for? Fluttershy lowered her gaze. Oh, nothing special. Twilight pursed her lips, then offered a small sealed bag. It's not a lot. I was hoping Spike would participate in the study, but he refused, so I have some extra. Fluttershy perked up at that, taking the bag. Thank you, Twilight. As Fluttershy left, Pinkie Pie gave a long stare at Twilight Sparkle. I still think this is going to end badly, Twilight. Oh, stop being so gloomy, Pinkie, Twilight said, with a shake of her head. After all, what's the worst that could happen? Twilight Sparkle and Pinkie Pie waited a good hour before they began their rounds, starting with Fluttershy. The first jarring note was found in Fluttershy's garden. Angel was laying in the garden on his back, half-consumed giant bowl of carrots resting next to him. The little rabbit was staring at the clouds with wide eyes, a goofy grin on his muzzle, stretched forepaws towards the sky as though he might be able to catch one of the clouds. His hind legs were kicking at the air, as though the little rabbit were actually trying to hop, while flat on his back. Pinkie Pie and Twilight Sparkle exchanged glances. Twilight knocked on the door, and there was a rustle of movement from behind it. The door opened, and a red-eyed Fluttershy poked her nose out. "Hi, Twilight! Hi, Pinkie Pie!" Fluttershy squeaked, throwing the door open. "Come in! Come in!" How do you feel?" Twilight asked as she and Pinkie Pie accepted the offer, the open door, and followed Fluttershy into her home. "I feel great!" Fluttershy said with a wide grin, as she flopped over the couch and stuffed her hoof into a bowl, coming up with a hoof full of its contents and stuffing it into her maw, chewing on it with an audible crunch. Fluttershy stepped over closer to Fluttershy, looking down, a brow slowly raising. "Fluttershy, are you eating birdseed?" Fluttershy looked up at Twilight with wide eyes, blinking once. "Birdseed?" she asked, licking her hoof. "These are M&Ms." Pinkie Pie shook her head slowly, and then pointed at the birdcage, where a large macaw was busy trying to crack the soft plastic shell of an M&M before spitting it out onto the bottom of the cage when it discovered that there was no seed within. Twilight just shook her head slowly. "Maybe you should come back to the library." Fluttershy perked up at that. "Oh, books? I'll read some books," she said, as she reached for the bowl and picked it up, grabbing another hoofful of birdseed and chewing on it happily. While Pinkie Pie took Fluttershy back to the library, Twilight Sparkle headed for Sweet Apple Acres to see how Applejack was handling herself. Applejack, however, was nowhere to be found. Twilight couldn't find her in the barn, or even in the house. She wasn't out in the apple orchard, as far as Twilight could see, so instead, she went to Big Mac to ask the Earth Pony where his sister was. Big Mac was bucking a tree quite vigorously. Usually, it only took a single hard shove of a hoof to cause the apples to come raining down, but today, Big Mac seemed to be having an exceptionally hard time of it. The big red Earth Pony was sweating as he kicked at the tree. Again and again and again his hooves pounded the thick trunk, causing the entire tree to shake, leaves rustling, and yet no apples fell. The sound of muffled giggling reached Twilight's ears, and she came up short, instead heading right, into some low-lying bushes. Applejack was in the bushes, on her back, a hoof stuffed against her muzzle to muffle her giggling. "Applejack?" Twilight asked, bewildered. "What is going on?" Applejack removed her hoof, and then stuffed it back against her mouth to try to stifle the loud laughter that immediately escaped. In between hearty, breathless peals of laughter, she began to explain. "Ah ha 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 ha! Ah ha ha! I glued them to! Ah ha ha! Glued them to the bucking tree!" Before dissolving into helpless laughs once again. "You glued what?" Twilight asked, peeking her head up from the bushes, staring as Big Mac began to buck the tree again, vigorously rocking the trunk with his powerful slams of his hind legs. "The apples!" Applejack gasped breathlessly, laughing hard again. "Ah ha ha! I blew the apples to the tree, and he just keeps bucking and bucking and bucking and ah ha ha ha!" The farm pony dissolved into fresh peals of laughter. "Come on, Applejack, we need to get you out of here," Twilight said, quickly moving over to the laughter-immobilized pony, "before Big Mac finds out and murders you." With Fluttershy and Applejack safely ensconced in the library, and under the careful eye of Pinkie, Twilight went out to find Rainbow Dash. Rainbow Dash was found in the field, riding a rain cloud, her maniacal laughter echoing joyously. "Rainbow Dash, what are you doing?" Twilight called from the ground, up to the cloud where Rainbow Dash's distinctive tail was visible. "I'm having fun," Rainbow Dash called, peering down over the edge of the cloud with a wide grin. "Oops, wait a second." Twilight could only watch as Rainbow Dash rode the cloud towards a small cottage on the other side of the field, settling over an Earth Pony who was in the process of removing dry clothes from the wash line. With a few quick bounces, Rainbow Dash caused a torrent of rain to pour down on the pony and the clothes, wetting them. The pony scowled and waved a hoof at the Pegasus, shouting angrily. Rainbow Dash sped away then, abandoning her empty cloud and ending up in the grass near Twilight, rolling about and giggling helplessly. "You should have seen his face! Ha 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 ha! I kept dumping water on his clothes every time he went to bring them in." The rainbow mare rolled in the grass, thrashing and laughing. Twilight was mortified. "Rainbow Dash, you're going to get in so much trouble for this," she hissed, picking the other mare up and nudging her hurriedly. Come on, we need to get you back to the others. Rainbow Dash huffed and then sighed, before a flyer hit her in the face. Snorting once, the mare tugged the piece of paper off of her face and stared down at it. Her eyes widened slowly, and she began to bounce in place. Twilight Sparkle didn't even have time to blink before Rainbow Dash was gone. The only indication of her direction was the rapidly expanding rainbow halo that was evidence of a sonic rain boom. The unicorn picked up the flyer and sighed, shaking her head. The flyer stated, "Donut sale on today." With Rainbow Dash gone to Celestia knows where, Twilight instead went to the Carousel Boutique to find out if Rarity was destroying her day. The bell on the door jingled as Twilight stepped inside, and she saw Rarity feverishly working, her head bent and horn glowing. "Ah, Twilight, I simply must get more of this medicine you gave us this morning. I am working at twice the speed, and I am having the most wonderful ideas for dresses," Rarity said with a happy smile, not even stopping in her work as she looked up. Twilight gave a sigh of relief. "Oh, thank goodness, you wouldn't believe what the others—" Twilight cut herself off as Rarity turned around to show her the dress, holding it out for inspection with a wide, happy grin. The librarian's expression slowly turned aghast, and she bounded over to the boxes arranged in front of Rarity, looking in horror at all the dresses contained within. "What, you don't like them?" Rarity asked, frowning. Twilight was speechless. All of the dresses, every single one, were tie-dyed. Twilight returned to the library, dragging a recalcitrant Rarity with her, only to find that the library was surrounded with what appeared to be a giant cage comprised entirely of glowing purple magic. A very unamused Princess Luna sat outside, glowering at the two mares. Feeling distinctly like she was in trouble, Twilight minced her way over to the Dark Princess. "Your friends escaped," Luna stated flatly, eyes narrowed. "They broke into Sugar Cube Corner, and the Cakes called the Royal Guard to attempt to get them out. We were not amused." "It's my fault," Twilight said quickly, her ears splaying backwards. "I'm conducting a study into the effects of this herb, but I realized I couldn't do it myself, so I enlisted my friends. You didn't happen to catch Rainbow Dash, did you?" "We found her at the donut stand. She was so stuffed as to be unable to fly away," Luna said with a toss of her head. Twilight gave a helpless laugh. "Well, I'll go in there and keep them contained, I promise." Luna narrowed her eyes at the librarian, her expression suspicious. "I trust that you will not allow them to escape again," Luna said flatly. "I will try my best," Twilight said with a sincere nod. "Very well, then. But I will remain outside to ensure that no further shenanigans take place," the princess said with a wave of her hoof. "Thank you, Princess Luna," Twilight said with a slight bow. Pressing past her, the bars in front of the library door faded, and allowed them inside. Within, the girls were all partying, giggling, and dancing to a tune coming from the radio. Food was strewn around randomly, on the tables and chairs. Pinkie Pie was the exception to the dancing, standing to the side and staring at the dancing mares with a bored, annoyed expression. Twilight made her way over to Pinkie Pie, while Rarity immediately joined in. Pinkie Pie grumbled. "They're all acting crazy," she complained to the unicorn. Twilight giggled helplessly. "But you got to admit, it's kinda funny." "Luna doesn't seem very amused," Pinkie Pie pointed out, before giggling softly as well. "I really should make it up to her somehow," Twilight said with a shake of her head. "Watch this lot while I talk to her." Pinkie Pie nodded, turning back to the 4 dancing mares while Twilight picked up a plate of brownies and moved towards the door. Pinkie Pie watched her for a long moment, eyes narrowing, a thoughtful look crossing her features. Twilight stepped outside and up to the bars of the makeshift prison, holding out the plate of brownies. "Do you want a brownie, Princess?" Luna turned towards the librarian, biting her bottom lip. "It has been a long time since my last snack. I guess one wouldn't hurt," she muttered to herself, taking one and biting it in half, chewing it up and swallowing. Twilight smiled sheepishly. "I'm sorry you got dragged into this, Princess," she apologized, picking up a brownie herself and biting into it happily. She swallowed before continuing. I didn't think it would affect them all so strongly. Just do not allow it to happen again, Luna said with a wave of her hoof. Pinkie Pie burst out of the doorway, her eyes wide, breathing hard. Twilight, don't eat the brownies, they're mine. Twilight blinked, holding up her half-eating brownie sheepishly. I'm sorry, Pinkie. I'll buy you some replacements tomorrow. Pinkie Pie shook her head vigorously, whining. No, you don't understand. Those were my brownies. They must have gotten them from my personal stash. I baked the herb into them so that I didn't have to taste it. Luna blanched and spat out part of the brownie she was eating, before her and Twilight exchanged worried, wide-eyed glances. The music blared louder, and the 5 ponies all lazed on the couches, consuming food and giggling amongst themselves. Luna had joined them, claiming that she needed to monitor the situation within the library, but was seen by all of them to be sneaking pieces of cake every now and again, devouring them ravenously when she assumed that the others weren't watching. Pinkie Pie was the only one not giggling, and was glowering at the room at large. Come on, Pinkie Pie, Twilight urged, giggling and bouncing in place. Come have some fun. You're high, Twilight, Pinkie Pie said flatly. You all are. Oh, you are just being a killjoy, Rarity protested, and Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash backed her up with enthusiastic agreement. Pinkie Pie gave an ah of annoyance, shaking her hoof. Come on, you guys, I do 3 hits of this stuff and bake cakes. A curt knock at the door made them all pause, and Twilight carefully picked her way over to the door, pulling it open. The unicorn's eyes widened. Princess Celestia! Twilight squeaked. Immediately, all movement ceased as the Sun Princess stared around at all of them, her eyes finding Luna. I must speak with my sister. Yes, Celestia? Luna asked uncertainly, her cheeks flushing. Please tell me, dear sister, why Celestia Drools is scrawled across the face of the moon, Celestia asked bluntly. Twilight blinked, leaning to the side and craning her head out the front door and up towards the moon, finding out that, indeed, the words were scrawled onto the surface of the moon as though by a giant quill. Luna flushed even harder, lowering her head but not responding. Celestia stared at her young sister for a long, long moment, not saying a word before she sniffed and turned away. I trust you will remove the words, she said as she walked away. There was silence for a full 5 seconds before all ponies fell to the floor, laughing helplessly. I thought she was going to send me back to the moon to remove it by hoof, Luna gasped between hearty laughs. The morning after found the 6 ponies and a single princess waking up to the mess of the party previously, and the royal decree sitting on the center table that the herb and all research pertaining to it was to be destroyed. Pinkie Pie was already walking out the door when the other mares awoke. I have half a shop to fill back up, she complained as she bounced away. Twilight picked up the royal decree, yawning, and then frowning down at it. Rarity looked over her shoulder, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. Aw, they're making us destroy the herb? Twilight nodded sadly. I guess it's for the best. It was kind of destructive. But it was fun, Rarity complained. I ate too much, Rainbow Dash groaned, rubbing her stomach. I ate birdseed? Fluttershy asked, aghast, staring down at the few remaining seeds left in her bowl. Applejack winced faintly as she remembered the previous day. My brother is going to be so mad at me. I, at least, did not do anything foolish, Rarity said with a definitive air of superiority. Twilight gave a nervous laugh, hoping that she was far, far away when Rarity discovered what she had done to her beautiful dresses. Luna rubbed her temples. I must apologize to my sister. My behavior was amiss. Twilight nodded. You kind of did broadcast a naughty message across the entire night sky. Luna winced, shaking her head. Do not remind me. I trust you will not be experimenting with any more substances, young unicorn. Twilight shook her head earnestly. No, Princess Luna. She trailed off and then looked thoughtful. But there are these mushrooms that Zecora told me about. The end.